It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. We've got Mr. Josh Waters from Political Strategies is on with us. Josh, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good morning, Paul.
Good morning to you. So what I want to know is, yesterday was we had the task force meeting on taxes, and you're always in attendance, and you do such a good job of recapping what happened. But this one was interesting because I understand they were going over the prospects of another internet sales tax debate. This is something that was already defeated, which means they shouldn't even be discussing it because the conservatives have already, they put up a good enough defense to say we're not going to pass this tax on people. What was the environment like? Was it pretty pro-tax increase on the people of Arkansas?
Yes, it was, Paul. Yesterday the agenda was basically split evenly between kind of miscellaneous revenue, and then the rest of the time was really focused on the internet sales tax. A lot of discussion on the constitutionality of it, going back to the Quill versus North Dakota decision. And then there was some discussion towards the end about maybe how much money they could collect. But at the end of the day, Paul, to me it was pretty obvious that, the way some of the questioning went from some of the legislators and just kind of the response from some of the government officials there, that it was really geared more towards, okay, if and when we can get an internet sales tax, how much money is that going to be? And they didn't really know the answer to that question. But I would say it was did seem to be very much pro internet sales tax from some of the legislators and then some of the government officials who were presenting about it.
So I'm excited to get to listen to the audio, and I know we're going to have that. Hopefully we'll have that coming, and we'll listen to it tomorrow on the program. But, I kind of get the feeling. Okay, so let me just ask you this. Were there any questions that just they don't want to be – let me just say this. It's obvious to me they don't want to be seen as increasing taxes on the people of Arkansas. But the arguments, that's what the internet sales tax is. It's going to be taking more money out of us, out of our pockets that we could be spending elsewhere. And so, it is a tax increase. We firmly established that they're just after more money, and more money from us to the government is a tax increase any way you look at it. But it seems like they want to focus on the verbiage and the language, and they want to find any way to be able to say, no, it's not a tax increase. Were they trying to get these bureaucrats to agree with them?
Yes, they were, Paul. At the very beginning of this portion of the meeting yesterday, before they even started on the internet sales tax, Representative Charlie Collins, who's a advocate of the internet sales tax, he asked them before they could even get started on any information. He said, I just want to get this on the record in this public meeting. This isn't really a tax increase, is it? It's not a new tax. We're just trying to collect a tax that's already on the books. And he's like, now, isn't that correct? Am I wrong there? And so the government official said that he was correct. And, Paul, we know that that's just not 100% accurate. Like you said, this is placing a new sales tax on the point of sale on online purchasers who do not have a physical presence in the state. Mm-hmm. The law on the books right now is a use tax, and it is owed and it is due.
They just don't have a mechanism to enforce collection on. So what you said is the law right now is a use tax. And a lot of people don't know, so if you buy stuff on the internet, you're supposed to, remit taxes as a use tax. But it's very difficult to enforce because they don't know what you've bought. Right. Go ahead.
And that's, and that's what we're doing here. That's why they have to try to change the law, Paul, is because they're not getting as much money as they want under the use tax. And I'm not advocating saying, okay, no one, pay their use tax. That's due. The state has the legal authority to enforce that. What they do not have the legal authority to do is try to force an out-of-state company without a physical presence in the state to collect and remit back to the state a sales tax at the point of sale for these online purchases. The state has no legal authority under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution, and as applied in the Quill versus North Dakota decision and longstanding Supreme Court precedent. And until, in specific language in some of those cases, Paul, was that this is in the purview of Congress, which is consistent with the Commerce Clause, and only until Congress acts can anything change with this, unless the Supreme Court changes its mind. But even then, I would hope that the Supreme Court does not legislate from the bench, but instead upholds precedent, and this is what Congress should just decide. And since they've declined to decide it, Paul, my argument would be they've said what they want to say, and the people have been represented say we're not going to have an internet sales tax. And until Congress changes its mind, Arkansas has no legal authority and, in my opinion, no business trying to pass an internet sales tax here in Arkansas.
It seems like the mentality is, ever have like a damp washcloth, and it seems like what they're trying to do is wring it, and we're the washcloth taxpayers, and they're just trying to get as much money out of us as they can. Was there anybody that offered pushback? Was there anybody that was like, hey, this is going to be more, you guys are after more of money out of our pockets to the government?
Yes, there was some pushback from at least one legislator. Senator Trent Garner, actually later on in the presentation, he kind of, I think, poked fun because people bend over backwards sometimes in how they phrase this, and they carefully craft their language around what the internet sales tax is, and it can get really complicated, and there is a key legal distinction between the use tax and legal tax. But his question, which is what people really care about, Paul, at the end of the day, does this bill mean that there will be more money coming out of the pocketbook of Arkansans and into the government coffers? And that's the question he asked to the same person who agreed wholeheartedly with Representative Collins. And this person's response, Paul, was, well, I don't know the numbers. Instead of admitting that this bill plainly, which the sponsors admitted during the session, that their estimate would be $100 to $150 million in new revenue. He asked a similar question to a DFNA official, and they're like, well, all these people are tax delinquent, so it would mean we'd have less tax delinquents.
Oh,
and
wow.
Paul,
gosh.
That's right. And that was really frustrating. The disdain that these people have for the people of Arkansas and the taxpayer of Arkansas, because they're not getting more money from them, basically, is my opinion of it. So, I'm thankful for Senator Trent Garner for kind of standing up there and thinking about, okay, how does this not affect the government and how much money these governments can get, but how does this affect the taxpayer, the customer of government?
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear that Senator Trent Garner, didn't stay silent and tried to point out. I mean, it seems to me these bureaucrats, I don't know. I mean, either the bureaucrats are being worked like a puppet, or the politicians are being worked. It seems like the bureaucrats and the pro, tax increase people are all on the same page for the most part.
Yeah, I think we talked about this back right after the session, Paul, is a lot of times in these committee meetings, it's about how this affects government, and there's tons of lobbyists there who are somehow, their clients are somehow benefiting from government. And there's not many people down there, unfortunately, and that's where Conduit comes into play. Conduit doesn't get anything from there being an internet sales tax or not an internet sales tax. Conduit's advocating for smaller government, economic freedom, and shrinking the size of government. And frankly, the internet sales tax would grow the size of government in Arkansas.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And at some point, I mean, we see the increased spending year after year, especially over the last 4 years. And the only way, and Conduit for Commerce, they've had, this great policy paper where, they talk about, listen, if you cut taxes, the law requires you to balance the budget. So if we can just limit the amount of money or cut off the flow of the money to the government itself has to balance, because that's what the law says, that we can't run a deficit, we can't have a debt. And so that's actually really encouraging. And so why would we want? I mean, if you're a small government person, why would you want to give the government another $150 million a year that they'll just find some way to spend? And that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, one other thing that was said yesterday that kind of caught me off guard was one of the BLR representatives, they're going through the case that's going to go up to the Supreme Court, because we will hear something on an internet sales tax type bill that came out of South Dakota that Senate Bill 140 was based on.
Yeah.
And in these arguments, she kind of went through, okay, here are the arguments that the state of South Dakota has. And one of the arguments that just really caught me off guard was that not having an internet sales tax creates, quote, economic waste. Economic waste because people are buying online instead of in their local stores. And Paul, as we know, the free market, there's no economic waste in the free market by people going online and making their purchases. It's only economic waste to people who have a vested interest in one business model or the other. But that's what's so great about technology and the free market. Getting a product faster, easier, and cheaper means the consumer wins. Mm-hmm. And I would not ever say that that is economic waste. I say that's economic prosperity and it's economic growth.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to quit shopping on the internet if you put an internet sales tax on. I mean, matter of fact, the government is counting on it because they want the money. This is what's so funny about it. You know what I mean? That argument doesn't make sense. The government wants they want to tax the internet because people are shopping on the internet. And so no one is going to stop doing that. And the other thing is, was there any talk about saving small business? We need to do this for our Main Street businesses. That's Dan Douglas. Was there any talk about that? Because to me, I don't see how giving more money to the government is going to save small business. I mean, is the government going to take that extra money and advertise for the local business, put up billboards, make commercials? No, they're not. They're going to spend it on something else.
Yeah, that's right. There was one question, I believe it was from Representative Pitch. They wanted some numbers, and at the end of the day, they could not give them any numbers on exactly how much money, more revenue, more taxes would come in if this passed. And Representative Pitch said what he would like to see is some data, too, on how local businesses, he used Toys R Us, though, as a local business sample, which is not a local mom-and-pop store, but brick-and-mortar stores in a city, data about them closing. Because, that is an argument that people have pushed is, all these, or some of these businesses, these brick-and-mortar businesses are closing. And their reason, they say, is because of the internet sales tax. But, Paul, it's not because of the internet sales tax or no internet sales tax. As we know, it's just the free market.
Exactly.
People's buying habits have changed. And for government, for all these conservatives who say they're for free enterprise, for the free market, and that's what works best, this flies in the face of the free market. Now, yes, maybe some businesses have closed, but that business has shifted to online sales, and anyone can go on and engage in online e-commerce sales as well. And so I think that's an argument out there, and people see that, and so it's probably a pretty persuasive one. But at the end of the day, are we free market, or are we for government trying to control market through regulation and taxation?
Yeah. There's always a time where a business model begins to become less effective. And a lot of people don't want to admit that. They just say, well, they're buying and I'm in sales, and so why? But it's completely two different things. I can set up an internet store in no time. It'd take me a lot longer to set up a brick-and-mortar store. Patrick on our Facebook page just wrote, small businesses will not be saved by larger government and more regulation. Now, think about that. That's really, really good.
That's so good.
That's what they're advocating for. And, the pro-tax, the pro-government regulation, the pro-tax increase people, they never care about small businesses. Why all of a sudden do you think they care? They genuinely care about you now? No, they're using it as an argument to just try to get more money from the government. They don't. If they cared about small businesses, they'd actually, cut your taxes. But instead, they constantly are, it's just kind of ships passing in the night. There are mutual, perceived mutual interests. And that's why they're all of a sudden on the side of small businesses, because they can use it as a talking point to try to get more money for the government. And it's like you said, Josh, everybody down there, these bureaucrats are all talking about how this law or that law affects them, not affects the taxpayer. There's a huge disconnect there where the biggest lobby, and it's important to know this, Josh, because you're the one that told me this after you were down there a session, you realized this, that the biggest lobby down there are the bureaucracies lobbying for themselves.
Yes, yes, Paul, that's right. It's, whatever, if it's an agency, a state agency, if they're there, if it's, city or counties, they're a very large presence there, and they're really pushing for the internet sales tax because it would mean more money for their city or county. Paul, but if we want to talk about small business and helping businesses, let's cut the corporate income tax in the state. It brought in $433 million in fiscal year 2017. We can cut the Quick Action Closing Fund, which is a corporate welfare program that tries to redistribute our current businesses' tax revenue that they pay in. They redistribute to competing businesses to come in and compete against them, steal their employers away at a subsidized rate because the taxpayers getting it, and they're getting trying to get a bunch of these Chinese companies to come in, which I know you talked about.
Yes.
If we really want to help business, and especially small business in the state, let's cut the corporate income tax, and then at the same standard, let's cut all this spending on corporate welfare, and let's see these businesses come in. Let's do what President Trump and Congress did. They slashed the corporate income tax, and they are seeing almost daily corporations come out and announce pay raises and announce bonuses. I mean, the model works.
And investments. So, yeah, you're exactly
that's right.
You're exactly right. And, yeah, that whole China thing, all these Chinese companies that we're giving our money away to, when you look over there and what they're destroying churches, it's just like, wow, why are we participating in this? Why are we we just don't have the same values, and yet we're gonna take our taxpayer dollars and give it to these Chinese companies when their government's over there, destroying churches and persecuting Christians. Mr. Josh Waters from Political Strategies, it's always a pleasure to have you on. When's the next time the task force is going to meet?
They will start meeting again for 2 days a week, and so the next task force meeting will be March 19th and 20th. And they're about to hit the ground running. They're going to make recommendations. But, as you know, we talked about kind of the reason for some of this task force is to condense down that decision-making authority to a small select group. So only the task force members, it was announced, will be able to make official recommendations for the task force to vote on. Mm-hmm. And if other legislators want to have a recommendation heard, they have to find a task force member to run that. And so that'll be coming up in the months ahead. And I think we're really going to see a lot of meat to these recommendations, hopefully, and there'll probably be a lot of debate going forward in the next few meetings.
I hope we don't have any recommendations about things that have already been voted down by the Arkansas General Assembly, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that. Josh Waters, I appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
All righty, thank you. Folks, we got to take a break. Hey, coming up.